Welcome back. In this series of videos, I'm going to demonstrate how to create and maintain a menu. Before we start this, in this particular video, I'm going to explain a few concepts that you'll just need to understand just a little bit to see you through all the different sections and understand why we've done things the way we have. And you'll find it can be as simple as you like, or it could be very, very complex, depending on how complex your menu is. So the first thing we need to understand is that all our buttons and items are separate. Now I'll go through that in a minute and show you how categories, buttons are totally separate to actual items, menu items. So think of your categories and buttons as shelves, and basically we're going to grab our menu items, which are our coffees and drinks, and we're going to put them on those shelves. So that's what we're actually going to be doing here. So let's start with the basics. We have to go into our back office. So let's go into our back office icon, log in with our supervisor, and everything we need to do is in this button called buttons, basically. As you can see now, we've got a layout very similar to your front screen, which is your menu. And on this little pull down on the right, you can see there's our menu. That's a menu already created, but we're going to create a new one from scratch. We're going to call this one Your Cafe. Your Cafe. And let's refresh. We've got nothing in Your Cafe. So how do we create that menu? We're going to create an item. So in this case, we already got items in there. I'm just going to create on my first button. I'm going to look up any item. Let's say I'm just going to grab a Red Bull or something. There we go, Red Bull. I'm going to give it a color. Red Bull's usually blue, isn't it? There we go. And so we've just created a new menu called Your Cafe and Red Bull. Now, it might not seem that way. I'm just going to step out a step, go back into my buttons, and now it'll show me that I've got Your Coffee Mate and Your Cafe menu. So if I go to the Coffee Mate menu, which is my other menu that's already in there, I've now created a new menu alongside it, and this can be set up differently on every terminal as well. So if you have a section where you have a bar and you have a section where you have a bistro, you can actually separate the menus on each terminal by having different menus all in the one screen, all in the one package. Okay, so now we've got our basic menu created called Your Cafe. All right, so let's have a look at how we would start this. So the first thing we need to do now that we've created a menu is have a look at our physical menu and see how we can relate it to our buttons. So as you can see over here, we have coffee and we have soft drinks. Okay, so these would be our main categories. And like on a normal menu, you could have red pizzas, white pizzas if it's a pizza bar, or you can have entrees, mains, desserts if it's a restaurant. Now, these are usually categorized in your own menu. So basically, in this case, we're going to create a couple of buttons here, a couple of categories called coffee and soft drinks. Okay, so won't worry about this button here at the moment, but what we're going to do is we're going to create some menu categories across the top, and these first two rows here are basically that. They are your menu categories. So this will be our coffees and this will be our soft drinks. How do we do it? Very simple. Click on our first one. We go to our edit menu categories. We are now going to create a refresh Your Cafe menu categories. Let's go new. We're going to create a new one. It's going to be on the first button, which is 0. It's going to go in Your Cafe. It's a multiple button pad, and I'll explain these concepts in a little bit. But let's call this one coffee. So there's our first one. We're going to save that, and our next one we're going to create is on button number 1. We're going to call this one soft drinks. Soft drinks. So, okay. So if we go back here now, you can see we have two menu categories. We have our coffee and we have our soft drinks. Normally I would call the coffee hot drinks because you'd have more than just coffee. You'd have teas and so forth, so you can call that hot drinks. If I want to change that, I can just go back to my edit menu categories. There's my coffee. I'm now going to change that. I'm going to call this hot drinks. Whichever you find easier for yourself to understand. So I've called it hot drinks and soft drinks. If I left it as coffee, it'd be like our menu, coffee and soft drinks. So let's go back, and now we have our two menu categories. So we've got no menu items underneath us yet. We just got two menu categories. Okay, so this is the very basis. So far, what we've seen is we've created a new menu name. Okay, called Your Cafe. We've created a couple of category buttons. You see me put a button on there, but now we're going to actually start looking at putting together our actual items. But this part of the video, and this first video, I just wanted to demonstrate how we get started. As you can see, the easiest way to get started is like I've done there, is I grab my coffee menu, I've looked at my coffee category, looked at my soft drink category, and I've actually created 2 categories across the top for our soft drink. So you can relate this to your menu. Very important when you're structuring a menu that you try and relate it as best as possible to your physical written menu. So when staff go grab a menu, they can look at the menu, look at the category across the top, and they can find it in the categories across the top here. Okay, so now you've seen how you create a menu, you've seen how we can edit a category button. Alright, so the next video we're going to show you is how to actually create the items and the buttons. One more thing that I want to highlight here, and it's not super important at this point in time, but I want you to be aware that you saw me actually give the buttons a number here, button number 0, button number 1. You don't see this, but these buttons are all actually numbered. So for example, our first category is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 999, but only the first 12 are visible here. So this is your menu, but you can have it jumping to other pages that could have different modifiers or options for that particular menu item. So if you can understand that, you can start to see this can become very, very powerful, because now you can go from one, click a button, go to another page. It gives you another set of modifiers and buttons that are specific for that particular item. And you've got 999 pages to do so. The same thing goes with your buttons underneath here. These pages, or categories as we call them, they are numbered also from 1 to 49. And if you want to know where you're sitting, you can see them on the side here. Currently on category 0, and we're currently on a button item number 3. So if I click on this one, you'll see it's current number 1. Okay, so a couple little concepts there to understand. We have different menus that can be all laid out in the same file. We have different categories, and we have different lots of buttons. Okay, so that's all in this particular video. I just wanted to show you how you can create your categories, your menu easy enough, and now we'll start to move on to, in the next video, we'll start to show you how to create your buttons and your items. More importantly, before we create our buttons, we need to know that they're separate, like I mentioned before, so we need to create them. So the next video is going to be all about how do we create our items. Thank you for watching.